There's something about the Doors music and Jim Morrison, obviously, that I think represents to younger people and each new generation coming up. I think the Doors represent a sense of freedom. Freedom from the constraints of your religion, your schooling, your politics, perhaps even your family. Freedom to be your own human being. So I think it's a combination of the search for inner reality, the search for inner truth, but just a sense of being free.
Man. Who is he? Where is he? Why is he here? Isolated in space on a round mass of matter live some several billion intelligent beings. Man. But what is his origin? Some say he evolved from the slime of the sea. Others that a god created an Adam and Eve and he was their descendant. Yet another speculates that he was brought here sometime in the distant past when the Earth was colonized by men from another dying planet. Despite the theories and speculations, the answer remains an unsolved mystery. As to where he is, that's easier. A planet 8,000 miles in diameter, located in a remote portion of a galaxy, somewhere in infinite space. Why is he here? That too remains an unsolved mystery. Occupied by his daily affairs, he finds little time to contemplate such questions, except for those moments on a clear night, when man pauses and looks to the star-filled heavens, and in his mind stirs an unanswered question. He searches his thoughts for an explanation, a key to the faint, forgotten memory of his past. And perhaps at that moment, somewhere else in the universe, on a distant planet similar to his own, somewhere on the other side of our galaxy, other intelligent beings wondered too, and set out in airships on an adventure through space to search for their answers.
Good evening. Reports of flying saucers are nothing new. From the beginning of recorded time, men have been seeing unexplainable things in the sky, and there's no reason to doubt they saw something. The question is, was what they saw really there? And what was it they really saw? The great flying saucer mystery of 1966 began here, near Dexter, Michigan, late in March. And before the month was out, flying saucers were being reported from New Jersey to California, from Colorado to Long Island, from Ohio to Georgia. Invariably, the first reports were brought in by quiet and sober citizens like Frank Manor, father of 10 children, a countryman, a hunting man, a man used to wooded swamplands by night.
Are you sorry now that you did tell people what you saw?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry because not that it's not the truth, but it's just the idea, the reaction of the people. They think you're a nut. Tell you the truth, that's just what they figure you are. And I'm not going to take it no more. I don't want nobody down in here. I just leave me alone. And if the thing lands right there by that pump, I'd never say a word. Then he got out and talked to me. I wouldn't tell nobody. That's just the way I feel. I'm bitter and disgusted in the whole matter. And if people's going to act like that, I hope one lands right in Ann Arbor, right in the middle of Detroit.
This is an IFO, identified flying object. A man, not Superman, jetting in a Bell Aerosystems rocket belt. Psychiatrists often call these reported UFO sightings illusions, hallucinations, self-delusions.
I'm not saying that there aren't things in the sky that we don't know about. What I am saying is that when there's anything that one doesn't know about, then the mind fills it with a great mass of fantasy. And that most of what we're dealing with in these reports is almost certainly fantasy.
First of all, the objects are not unidentified. We know what they are. Second, in most cases, they're not flying. And finally, in many cases, they are not even material objects.
As for the latest rash of UFO reports, a pioneer in rocketry and an early popularizer of interplanetary space travel, Dr. Willie Ley thought he detected a reason.
Well, it is very typical that it is a rash, because if you get one report, you get a clutch of other reports following it. It feeds on itself, and the main problem there is that the term flying saucer, or to go official about it, UFO, has produced a label. In the past, if somebody saw a streak of light in the sky, which he couldn't understand and which didn't interest him very much, well, he might have told his wife that he saw a streak of light. Most likely he didn't. But now that he has a label to put to it, he comes home and tells his wife, his children, his neighbors, the policeman on duty, and a few other people that he saw a flying saucer.
The Air Force sent its chief scientific consultant on UFOs, Professor J. Allen Hynek, to check the Michigan sightings. Dr. Hynek agreed that the good citizens of Michigan had seen something in the marshlands. He thought they had seen marsh gas.
I've had many letters pointing out that they, as children on the farm, had many experiences with swamp lights, and that this was obviously the thing that it was, and they couldn't understand why the people in Michigan got so excited over swamp lights. And the illusion of motion frequently is given by the fact that a little bit of swamp light appears here, it goes out, another one appears over here, that goes out then, but the illusion as viewed from a distance is that the objects have moved back and forth. And sometimes this gas will gather into a ball and actually float away.
In 1966, an important incident takes place in Michigan. It creates enough of an uproar that President Gerald Ford would at that time call for a congressional hearing on UFOs. Here are excerpts from Ford's actual letter to the House Armed Services Committee.
The Air Force sent a consultant, Dr. J. Allen Hynek, to investigate various reports, and he dismissed all of them as products of college student pranks, or swamp gas, or an impression created by the rising crescent moon and the planet Venus. I do not agree that all of these reports can be or should be so easily explained away. I am proposing that the Science and Astronautics Committee, or the Armed Services Committee of the House, schedule hearings on the subject of UFOs.
Congress acts on Ford's letter and holds an open hearing. Only 3 persons are invited to testify: the Secretary of the Air Force, Dr. J. Allen Hynek, and Project Blue Book head at the time, Colonel Hector Quintanilla.
Well, of course, by the time I arrived, the situation was so charged with emotion that it was impossible for me to do any really serious investigating. I had to fight my way through reporters to interview the witnesses.
Other sightings were reported over the area, and a solution from Dr. Hynek and Major Quintanilla seemed in the offing.
Well, the pressure was mounting for an official explanation. There were more than 60 newsmen jammed in at that news conference. I gave what I thought to be at that time the only scientific explanation possible for the faint lights in the swampy area. I made the statement that it could be swamp gas, and even though I went on to emphasize that I couldn't prove it in a court of law, that was the full explanation for these sightings. Well, the press picked up the phrase swamp gas and rushed off to the telephones, and I was to come into a great deal of criticism over it.
There are more things in heaven and earth, says Shakespeare's Hamlet, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. On the other hand, there may be less there than often meets the eye.
Well, then you get to today, and we're on the brink of interplanetary travel, and so we begin to see things in the sky again that we can't understand or can't explain immediately. So we explain them again with this sort of colossal egotism of man at his present time. We explain them in terms of our latest ability, namely on the brink of space travel, these must be spaceships.
It's been said in jest that if these UFOs are from other worlds and they wanted it to be known, all they'd have to do is land on the White House lawn. But an incredible incident, too quickly forgotten in time, took place over our Capitol. In 1952, Air Force spokesman for the Pentagon and UFOs at that time, Mr. Al Chop, relates the famous incident that stirred the Capitol, causing a request from even President Truman to be kept up to date on all the details.
There were radar reports of unidentified flying objects over the nation's capital. We had 3 reports. One came from Andrews Air Force Base radar control room, and 2 from the radar controls at Washington National Airport. The first sightings consisted of a number of unidentified targets picked up on radar. Then a call was placed from National to the Andrews Air Force Base flight controllers. They were apparently tracking the same targets. Then Andrews reported a visual observation of 3 objects that were apparently in the same position as those indicated by our radar sets.
The CIA now would enter the picture by convening a panel of top scientists to examine the UFO phenomenon. Among the panel members was one associate member who was destined to have more experience with the UFO phenomena than any other American scientist to date, Dr. J. Allen Hynek.
There were 2 films that were of particular interest to the panel at that time. One was a film taken by a Navy officer while on vacation in Utah, near Tremonton, Utah. The Utah film had already been subjected to some 1,000 or so man-hours of analysis by the Navy's Photographic Interpretation Laboratory. So the panel got up from their chairs and crouched around the wall to examine the films, and they asked to have the films run several times, as a matter of fact. Now, the Navy had, on the basis of their detailed analysis of the Utah films, they had concluded that the objects shown in the films could not be birds, balloons, aircraft, and so forth, but indeed that they were self-luminous, unidentified objects. Despite this conclusion, the panel rejected it and concluded that the objects were birds. They couldn't be unidentified, therefore they had to be birds. I came away from the meeting and from the room with the distinct feeling, however, that the panel had deliberately moved to debunk the whole subject and not to give it the serious scientific attention which it deserved. It's arrogant, egocentric, egotistical for us to think that we are the highest intelligences in the universe. I think that's completely preposterous.
We have not been able to come up with a logical explanation. At least our scientists have not. The only plausible explanation that would explain all of these sightings is the theory that these could be intelligently controlled vehicles controlled by an alien species, alien to this planet.
And last, there is also the question of longer-term effects. What would happen over many years? One social psychologist suggests that it might help to unite the world. If the visitors from space prove to be an enemy, he suggests, then we would unite as one species to drive the invader away and then to live in peace thereafter.